the other day I was discussing that I had a visitation from the Sirius star system, and I went into um, two of the takeaways that really stuck with me. Um, that I mean, just made so much clear for me. And one of those was the instruction to stay from under the curse of the cross and into the protection of the light. And I was led to do this video to expound upon what that means, because people tend to jump to their own conclusions. Um, and it's the program, that's running that we all have that gets offended and sometimes will totally miss the message based on being offended. And so I wanted to come and clarify or just explain a little bit what that means to stay from under the curse of the cross and into the protection of the light as I received it. So when that visitation happened and I got that download regarding the curse of the cross, it was obvious to me that that had something to do with, remember I talked about I had a gold necklace on my neck. That was a cross that my children had got for me, and all of a sudden it just slid down. Now mind you, it wasn't a loose at the clasp. It was one of the links, and the chain was really, really, really thin, so the links were, basically soldered together. But the way that it was broken was done in a way to make sure that I didn't put it back on unless I went and took it to get it fixed. And it was no coincidence that one of the messages that came through was regarding a cross when I had a cross on before the visitation, and it was removed. Everything has energy. Everything has energy associated with it. And I didn't understand how all of that was working. I just thought that I had a necklace on that my kids bought for me, and I liked it and I was wearing it. But everything has energy connected to it. And so when I came out of that state, I realized that there was something more to the cross, which is why I was instructed to stay from under the curse of the cross and into the protection of the light. And so biblically, I referenced a few scriptures that really made it stand out to me even further. And the curse of the cross was symbolic of being a curse, which is why Yeshua was associated with the death of a cross, because it was symbolic of a curse. High capital crimes that were punishable by death, the cross was used, crucifixion was used, and the cross was wood, which came from a tree. So the crucifixion was the most torturous form of death, and it was reserved specifically for those that had committed capital crimes that were punishable by death. But then, if you look in the scriptures, in Deuteronomy 21 and 22, it talks about if a man has committed a sin deserving of death and he is put to death, and you hang him on a tree. That's the New King James Version. We can go a little bit simpler than that. If anyone is found guilty of an offense deserving of the death penalty and is executed and you hang his body on a tree, then 23 says, his body shall not remain overnight on the tree, but you shall surely bury him that day, so that you do not defile the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. For he who is hanged on a tree is cursed of God. So there was a reason why the story went the way that it went with Yeshua, our example, being hung on a tree and being taken down and immediately buried, because it was believed by the standards of law that leaving the body up overnight would defile the rest of the land. Now, these were religious people. They had all the religion in the world and felt that they were doing God's will through crucifying the Messiah, when in fact they had no connection spiritually to be able to see that he was the plug. He was exhibiting an example of a direct connection with the Almighty, the Most High, without the need for religious rituals and the law and all of these things that acted as the middleman between people's relationship with their source. And so we know that his message was radical, and it was very out the box, and it basically eliminated the need for anything to stand between you and your relationship with your source. And he came, that example was to eliminate a middleman. The example was to eliminate a middleman, which would make no sense for him to become the middleman, because the sole purpose of his example was to show you that you have a direct connection with God, a direct connection. And so it talks about in the law how anyone that's hung on a tree is cursed by God if you leave their body up on that tree overnight, that you're defiling the land. And so these people thought that this is what God wanted them to do. Then if you go into the New Testament, in Galatians 21 and 22, which I find that, Galatians 3 and 13, not 21 and 22. I don't have my glasses on me. But Paul talks about how Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us, for it is written, and he referenced back to the scripture in Deuteronomy, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. And so the message that I received from who I believe, as I stated before, my parents on another dimension from the Sirius star system, who look like me, who are melanated beings, was not to denounce the example of Christ. Christ is a state of being. Christ consciousness, Christhood is a state of being. Jesus had to, which I don't reference him as Jesus because J didn't come into the English language until the 14th century. Yeshua, not to mention Jesus means hell Zeus, whole nother topic. Yeshua, the example, my example, came to dispel all of the issues that religion had caused. And even Yeshua had to obtain Christhood. So the process of crucifixion was the means that the example had to go through to obtain Christ consciousness, the mind of Christ, which is talked about over and over in the scriptures. And so that wasn't a message to diminish the example. What it was is that because there's energy attached to everything, when you focus on the cross, you're focusing on the death. When you focus on the cross, you're focusing on the law. Excuse me. So you have people that are focused on the cross. They get crosses, they wear crosses around their neck, they do cross symbolism over their body, they pray to the cross, they mourn the cross, they focus on the cross, the cross, the cross, the cross. When the cross is the curse, it's symbolic of the curse. The message was to stay from under the curse of the cross and under or into the protection of the light. The light is what resurrected our example. The light is eternal. The light symbolizes the power of God, or the power of the Most High, or the power of our source. The cross symbolizes the elimination of the ego, the curse. Because crucifixion was public humiliation. It was the most heinous way to be dealt with as a criminal, on display for everyone to see, embarrassing, humiliating, demeaning, painful, torturous, being tortured publicly for the public to witness. It's the elimination of the ego. It's the crucifixion of the ego at the place of the skull, aka Golgotha. It's the crucifixion of the ego. So the curse of the cross, focusing on the cross, the cross, the cross, you're highlighting the egoic nature more than you are your divine nature, the divine nature of the example. Christ did not obtain that level. Yeshua did not obtain the level of Christ without the elimination of the ego. And that is what the crucifixion was all about. So this is why it's important to develop a solid connection with your source and eliminate. Now, yes, we do have teachers. We have people that speak into our lives. We have people that, talk to us and encourage us. But at the end of the day, it's no different than a marriage. Your spouse and you should be like this. There should be no outside third party that should be able to come in and navigate and have an opinion and tell you all how to deal with each other and be constantly involved in that process. Whatever they tell you are things that you already know, so they're confirming what you know, but they're not the third party in the marriage, because relationships are designed for two passengers. And when you allow a third party to come in, it's sure to fail. So I just wanted to encourage you, develop that solid relationship with Source. Stay from under the curse of the cross. Stop focusing on the death and focus on the power of God, which is the light. Take care.